Hello everyone, so welcome back to my class today. So today in this lecture I will discuss an interesting essay by Vladimir Keilis Borok. Scientific research is a token of humankind's survival. So this essay is very much important thinking in perspective of current war going on between Russia and Ukraine. So why we don't need to use scientific reasoning or the inventions of science in very irrational way or in a very illogical way. So after reading this essay, we will come to know that the importance of science is not for destruction but for development. Okay, so as you can see on picture, the science is not meant to create the weapons of mass destruction. Rather, science is created our science is for making human lives a better place or human life a happy life. So without wasting our time, let's start our discussion. But as usual, before I start my discussion, my usual request is if you have not subscribed the channel yet, please do not forget to subscribe the channel, and if you are new to this channel, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. That motivates me, and that's a lot for a private institution teacher. Thank you. So we will start from very basic definition or very basic introduction of Vladimir Keilis Borok. So who was he? So he was basically, as you can see here, he was a Russian scientist or mathematical, so geophysicist and seismologist. So he died in 2013. Basically, he was the one, or he was a seismologist who study on the tremors, so created by any kind of physical structure or any kind of man-made so tests or experiments. And now look at here, he was the person, Vladimir Keilis Boruk was the person who first developed a method intended to predict earthquakes months in advance. So this person played key role to develop such a technique or such a technology that could predict earthquakes months in advance. So that really helped human being a lot, because now we can know through his contribution in this knowledge, through his contribution in this field, we really can know about the occurrence of earthquakes in advance or in pre-advanced time. So now moving forward, okay, so we will start this essay by discussing his reasoning. So he says that, like, what could be the reasons to be a scientist? Basically, as the title suggests, he considers science as the key, so goal or as a key idea for our survival in the modern time. Without thinking scientifically, without thinking in the logic, a human being or we cannot, or our existence, it will come under crisis. So why do we need to be a scientist? Scientist not in only in the term that a person who invents a kind of goods, but scientist from every kind of perspective. There could be social scientist, or one could be like art scientist, one could be language scientist. Whatever scientist you become or whatever intellectual you become, you have to use your intellectual power, you have to use your knowledge in a very positive way to make life a happy life. So in the beginning, this author discusses like the reasons to be a scientist. What could be the reasons to be scientist? He provides three reasons to be scientists. He says like freedom. So when you are a scientist, or when you want to be scientist, basically you are free, because you don't have to go for job that starts from as an 10 to 5, and then you have freedom to do the job of your passion, you have the freedom to do the job of your choice. You don't need to get stuck in office hours, you don't need to get stuck in routine jobs. You have the freedom to use your ideas, use your knowledge in very wide way, in very newly experimentable way. Next point, he says that when you are a scientist, you have a lot of friendship. Comrade means you come to be friend under or with the person who are like you, or who have similar kind of passion like you. So you have that kind of friendship. Next one, he says that when you are scientist, you are truly independent. As I have already explained, when you are scientist, you don't need to stuck yourself in 10 to 5 job. You don't need to stuck yourself in very routine job. So being a scientist provides us these three kind of gifts. Okay, so once again we become freedom, we become free, we also have a lot of friends like ours, then we become independent. Okay, so now let's move ahead. Okay, so this essay starts with the story from Cold War. So of course we know Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991 between US and then then Soviet Union. So when Soviet Union was finally broken into 15 countries, then Cold War officially or unofficially ended. But the Cold War ran from this period. So what happened during Cold War? Of course, as we know, during the Cold War tenure or period, US and Soviet Union, they had a kind of race competition to be the most rich country in nuclear weapons, or to be the first country to go into space and to land on moon. And that was the time when Russia became, then Soviet Union became the first country to land and to go into space. So Yuri Gagarin, we know that person, our astronaut. And then after that, US became the first country to step on the moon. So this all story starts from Cold War. Now, so if we have to talk basic thing about Cold War, then the term Cold War first appeared in a 1945 essay by English writer George Orwell, so called "You and the Atomic Bomb." Now look at here. So this term first appeared in an essay by famous writer George Orwell in his essay "You and the Atomic Bomb." Here, overall, the essayist starts this essay by discussing that why do we not need, or why don't we need knowledge or scientific invention that destroys humanity, that destroys Earth, that destroys the beauty of life, that destroys the beauty of being a human. So he gives example by discussing about the result of destruction that created by atomic bombs, and that could be created by atomic bombs in future. As we know that now two atomic bombs have already been dropped in Japan's Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So research on the theory of seismic waves. As we know that, so this time during this Cold War time, the countries, they were secretly conducting nuclear tests, and the writer wants to say that such seismic waves, the waves sometimes, the brutal waves could not only come from originate from like natural earthquakes. They could also originate from man-made prohibited nuclear tests. So who knows? Common people will have no idea like whether that kind of earthquake, brutal or devastating earthquake, was created by natural geophysical structure, or it was created by underground nuclear test which was prohibited or which shouldn't be done. So these, when the author being a scientist and seismologist started to conduct research in man-made seismological waves, then he came to know that during this time there were different multiple nuclear tests so going on underground, and because of that man-made earthquakes were very much frequent. So this was the reason why the author in this essay starts explaining his reason from Cold War time. Then he said he was also the one, this scientist was also the one who was invited to discuss the impact of nuclear test weapon on the civil life. Of course, no one should use, no country should use, the nuclearly powered countries like US, Russia, France, India, Pakistan, Korea, China, these countries, Britain, should never use nuclear weapons. And when he was invited by the UN in 1960 to discuss the impact of nuclear test or weapon on civil life, so basically the scientists who came in that meeting, they all agreed that no country should use nuclear weapon because it's not weapon of war. It's a weapon of what? It's a weapon of deterrence. When you use it, when one country use it, so there is no chance except to deter the war. It's not war. So when you drop one weapon, another will drop another nuclear weapon. It will not go in this way. One nuclear weapon and the life will finish for not only for particular region people but for everyone. So basically that meeting was, of course, as I have already explained, to discuss the threat of annihilation by nuclear weapon. Okay, so now moving ahead. Here you can see and picture these kind of weapons, they were a kind of mutually assured destruction. So when you use nuclear weapons, you are assuring that you have agreed with mutually or mass destruction, which is for another term, it has also another term like MAD. So now then total 2019 spending, you can see here figure at data that shows which country spends what amount in like preserving their nuclear weapons. You can see China spends 10.4 billion. So the country that spends more in preserving nuclear weapons is of course US, 35.4 billion US spends. Then comes UK, then comes Russia, then comes Pakistan, then North Korea, Israel, India, France, and then China. So these are the nuclearly powered countries. Not only nuclearly powered, in a sense, nuclearly weaponed powered countries. So this is the situation of our world, our peaceful, happy world, not going in a good direction, I guess. So then next, the problems that need to be addressed. According to the essayist or according to the scientist Vladimir, he says that the problem is how can we detect that any nation is violating that agreement where everyone has agreed that no country will so conduct nuclear weapon test, no country will like use nuclear weapon, but many countries they try to use, like some countries which recently we can take example of Iran, isn't it? Then North Korea. Of course, North Korea and Iran, these countries have been so imposed huge sanctions by European countries and US because they time and again secretly are trying to create nuclear weapons of great potentiality to destroy the great human number. Now between these two countries also, now North Korea has already been successful, whereas Iran has not, but Iran is also trying its best to do that. So the problem is how can we be sure that who is violating the agreement? Of course, so violation of agreement shouldn't be there. If some country that is conducting nuclear test weapon test secretly should not do that. There have been different now protest movements against this kind of violations throughout the world. Like here, as you can see, enough is enough in 2019 global nuclear weapons spending. So these kind of protest movement have been going on throughout the world, but still countries they keep on so testing the nuclear weapons potentiality of new and new nuclear weapons. Okay, so now look at here. Even the UN has a treaty that prohibits the use of nuclear weapons, tests of nuclear weapons. Okay, so on 7 July 2017, following a decade of advocacy by ICA and its partners, an overwhelming majority of the world's nations adopted a landmark global agreement to ban nuclear weapons, known officially as the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons (TPNW). So these things have been discussed, have been so drafted, but the problem is still again the same, that the countries who are nuclearly powered do not so heed these things, do not pay proper attention, do not follow the pacts and agreements done by themselves. Okay, so moving ahead. Now, so what does nuclear weapon test mean? It means seismic waves. It brings man-made disaster. It brings man-made earthquake that can be very brutal. It can be very brutal and devastating than natural earthquake. So such nuclear weapon test, underground nuclear weapon test also shouldn't be there. So the author of the essay says underground nuclear explosions they produce earth tremors very similar to those generated by earthquakes sometimes, which okay will be so of out of range for common man to understand. So here you can see on picture. Okay, moving ahead. Now so the main point is what could be the dangers of not thinking rationally when we are living, when we call ourselves like modern beings, when we call ourselves rational beings, when we call ourselves much civilized beings than other creatures, but we are the one, or the human beings are the one who are inventing weapons, creating weapons to kill each other. So we have progressed in science, like we have progressed in transportation, communication, medical science, but along with the same time, have also invented those kind of weapons that can kill millions of people, billions of people at a single second. So why such a situation arise? Such situation arises when we don't think rationally, when we forget that how we should spend our life, when we forget that life should be happy. Okay, so what could be the results when we conduct such kind of irrational experiments? Of course, earthquake, man-made earthquake could be there. then self-inflicted destruction of mega cities. We can destroy the cities, isn't it? Or the civilization that we have created for us. Then environmental catastrophes could be there, economic and social crisis could be there, of course. Like currently we can see, because of the war between Ukraine and Russia, so Russia has been imposed different sanctions, many sanctions by European countries, US countries, and then Ukrainian people have died, Russian soldiers are dying, and then now look at here, thousands people have already been dead. Next is a massive release of radioactivity, so from a nuclear waste disposal. When we like conduct this kind of nuclear weapon test, then from those kind of tests, experiments, massive nuclear waste disposal will be there. Then earthquake in the middle of megapolises. Okay, of course we can bring man-made earthquake, which we have already discussed. Then such irrational activities can bring like outburst of mass violence, then or any other global disasters could arise there. Can cause up to millions of casualties, render large part of our world inhabitable. Such nuclear experiments, nuclear weapons, use of nuclear weapons can make large part of our world inhabitable. The one we can learn from the atomic bombs dropping in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, then trigger global economic depression. Such wars they can trigger, or of course when such wars will be there with such weapons, there will be global economic depression, and there will be more and more war. There will be no solution, and finally the doomsday will arrive. So moving ahead now, what could be the solution? Basic thing is, so how can we bring peace on earth? How can we make our life happy? We can make our life happy only thinking in a very positive way. Of course science is needed, but science is not for destruction. Science could be used for making life easy by creating new technologies in transportation, health, communication, education. So science should be for good hope and humanity. There should be research in fundamental research, means health, transportation, housing. People or scientists should, richer countries should, developed countries should think more in how to make the life comfortable, better for everyone. Not the world shouldn't be heaven for someone, some small group of people, and help for the large or mass of the people. So the class gap should be also reduced by thinking by thinking scientifically. So by stopping man-made disasters, as we have already discussed, we should stop this kind of man-made disasters. Such man-made disasters, of course, they are nuclear, so kind of colonialism. Okay, so moving ahead. Now the solutions are, of course, the more solutions are, we should use our science and knowledge wisely. So we should be wise person, not only knowledgeable person. As so we read in the essay, isn't it, by Francis Bacon, so we can use our knowledge in field of antibiotics, in field of electronics, biotechnologies, synthetic fibers, then green revolution, as a genetic forensic diagnosis, source of new energy to find. We can use our knowledge to find new sources of energy. Then we can use our knowledge to find new mineral deposits. Then we can use our knowledge to find efficient defense from terrorism. Then we can use it to find cure from cancer. Then we can use it to find new forms of transportation. So actually science should be used for this purpose. Okay, science is meant for these kind of things, not to destroy, not to create or invent the weapons of destruction. Okay, so moving ahead now, what we need, moreover we need in this modern time, we need humanity, not hypocrisy. So Russia is not, and then Ukraine, they are fighting with each other, and then of course time and again we see how US colonizes, dominate, invades Western Asian countries like Libya, Syria, isn't, Afghanistan. US has is also in a similar port. So we only cannot blame Russia nowadays. There are different countries waiting to invade other small and then helpless countries. Like if we talk about China, isn't, China anytime can invade over Taiwan. So why now these kind of countries need the small countries to invade? I don't understand. Isn't it? These kind of things, if we talk, then it's beyond the logic. Of course, we know the basic thing is there is greed, and then when this greed meets nationalistic feeling, there is no any reason. Otherwise, China could leave it alone. Why China needs to invade Taiwan, why Russia needs to invade so Ukraine, and Russia has its own logic also. Russia says that if Russia does not invade Ukraine, then of course US will come to its very close, and then anytime US may invade, because in history, if we turn back to history, we see Russia was even tried to be captured by Bonaparte, then after during Second World War, etc., who tried to capture. Then Hitler also tried to capture Stalin's Russia, but they could not be successful, because we know that Russia is what? Russia is very rich country in oil. So could be there could be greed. So because of this greed, humanity is always suppressed and hypocrisy always surfaces. So we need science for good reason. We don't need science for destruction. This should be understood by everyone. Okay, learners? Okay, so now look at it during this time of crisis when countries are very much aggressive, hostile to each other, when like big countries, powerful countries in terms of economy and weapon are very much hostile to others. We need the accountability of such organizations like D7, and not only D7, we need accountability of UN, we need all accountability of all those organizations who suppose or who claim to be working for humanity, to be working for the preservation of peace, better life on this earth. So, accountability of such developed G7 countries is must. Okay. So then this is it, dear learners. If you like the video, if you like the lecture, please do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel, and do not forget to share this video with your friends, because your one motivation, your one sharing means a lot of caring to me. Thank you and have a good day. We will meet soon in next video.